Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Placeholders podcast. I am Caley Fretz. We have a fantastic show for you this week. We have the merger that wasn't, Primoz Roglic's new team, Gravel Worlds, Lombardia, all kinds of good stuff today. Joining me, where are you, Jonny Long?
I am in the coastal city of Beihai. I'm probably not pronouncing it right. I've been in my hotel pretty much for a day and a half, sleeping intermittently. I did go outside once. I've watched a whole series of Top Boy. I've done some work. Yeah, I'm hoping it'll get glamorous.
Explain
soon.
What's going on over there?
We're out here for the Tour of Guangxi, the final World Tour race of the year. That starts tomorrow. We've got some press conferences today. I don't know who has arrived or who we'll be talking to, but I will find out in about 3 hours. That'll be fun, maybe.
I feel like at some point today, maybe we can peel back the onion a little bit and show people how this side of things works. Like, we didn't fly you to China, for example.
That's probably good to point out, yes.
Also joining me today, Iain Treloar. Iain, where are you?
I'm where I always am. I'm in the study in my little house, Melbourne.
In Melbourne.
Australia.
Welcome back to Placeholders. We have very much missed you. We're pulling you in because this is it's an Australian time zone episode this week. We've got Jonny over in that side of the world as well. Thought we would take advantage and get Iain back on the pod. So
well, it's very nice to see your little faces.
It is, isn't it? All right, let's get into the big meat of this week's episode, which is the merger that wasn't. I feel like we've been just talking about this particular story kind of endlessly for the last couple of weeks, but we have a conclusion. Well, I shouldn't say that. We don't actually have a conclusion, but we have some version of a conclusion. Jonny, where do we stand?
The place we stand at the minute is that Jumbo-Visma have less than 12 months, I guess, to find a new main backer, because it now looks like they're going back to the final year of their contractually obligated Jumbo supermarkets money, because they couldn't find enough agreement, I guess, between all the various equipment sponsors and like the money interested in it all, and maybe certain riders interested in it all. I think either you or Joe said it last week, Caley, that the longer it dragged on, the less likely it became. And we saw that. I think it was Friday, was it, that it all started breaking and all falling apart. So where we stand now is that Jumbo-Visma are from a position of strength and sort of morbid greed and appetite, where they look like they're going to conquer everything. They're now down one Primoz Roglic, which we'll get to later, and also down a major title sponsor that makes adhesives and sealants. And
they're not merging with Soudal Quickstep. That's the that's the crux of it. Everyone would have seen that last week. As Jonny said, it sort of fell apart at the end of the week. Lots of different reasons for that. I believe the biggest one was an issue with some of the equipment sponsors that they just could not reconcile. And this is an important thing. Obviously, you need equipment sponsors to run a professional bicycle team. And in particular, you need equipment sponsors that are not only giving you parts and bikes and all the rest, they're also giving you cash a lot of the time. And this was, from what I was hearing last week, it was one of the major stumbling blocks. We think there were quite a few major stumbling blocks, but this is one. Basically, Pon, which is a massive sort of bike conglomerate, owns Cervelo, which is the bike brand that Jumbo-Visma has been riding. Specialized was kind of trying to come in. I was hearing from Specialized folks last week that they were pretty confident they would be able to do so, and Pon sounds like they kind of just stood up and said absolutely not. And it was one, maybe the straw that broke the camel's back, or one bridge too far, or whatever metaphor you want to use, but it was too much for this particular merger and killed it dead.
I'm a little bit disappointed that it wasn't Safety Jogger that was the nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
Like a sponsor that we actually know about and care about instead of these Johnny-come-latelys.
Well, apparently Safety Jogger were prepared to stand behind or below Patrick Lefevre and his sort of safety life raft team that he was going to carry on with. So turns out, they're one sturdy and loyal shoe.
Now I'm even more disappointed because we could have had a Safety Jogger title sponsorship. Could have been Team Safety Jogger.
We should talk about this really briefly because it is worth noting that it did appear that Patrick Lefevre was kind of getting cold feet in the middle of last week. That he was putting out he's always a bit spicy with the media, right? But he has his weekly column and all the rest that he likes to drop bombs into on a regular basis. One of the things that he was kind of getting at last week was, potentially I will keep this license and I will start a team with the scraps, the remainder of my current team. At the same time, we had riders like Ilan van Wilder who went and won a bicycle race and have turned around and said this whole thing is shit, to quote him. And I hope it doesn't. I'm paraphrasing now. I hope it doesn't happen. We hope it doesn't happen. We want Soudal Quickstep to continue. All of these things kind of coalesced into it fully, disintegrating, basically. So, do we have any sense what now for both of these teams? I mean, Soudal Quickstep, I think, just sort of goes back to status quo, right? They appear to be keeping Remco Evenepoel, quite crucially, at least as of recording on Tuesday. They appear to be keeping Remco Evenepoel. What's going on over at Jumbo? Do we have any sense for what this might mean sort of going forward for them?
Well, I'll just quickly interject there because I don't think it does actually go back to status quo at Soudal Quickstep. Because they've just gone through this ordeal where most of the team thought that they were about to lose their jobs. And also, most of the team understood that they weren't good enough to go to the new team. So I think that there's bound to have been an erosion in trust with the leadership of that team. Maybe Patrick Lefevre has come in and appeared as some sort of, shining knight saving them from the grasps of it. And at least that seems to be the way that he's presenting it. But you referred to them as the scraps of Soudal Quickstep. And I think cycling's kind of a head game as much as it is a leg game. And when you've had it reinforced to you that your team could be absorbed like that you won't make the cut, and the entire financial model of the sport is so fickle that this kind of thing could happen in October, I'd have to imagine that people are a little bit rattled.
Yeah, definitely. With Jumbo, I guess there's reports coming in that Amazon are also now getting cold feet, and it's funny you use that term with Patrick Lefevre because real heads will know that he's famed for posting photos of his bare toes on his Instagram. But yeah, with Jumbo, I mean...
don't go look for it, by the way.
Don't go look for it, no.
If you hear that and you're like, I need to go see this, just don't. It's better for everybody.
And once you've seen one of them, you've seen them all. So if you just find one, you can just stop. Yeah, with Jumbo, I guess as long as I don't know, it's going to be interesting. Like there was the reports of the Saudi Arabia money coming in, but that's kind of just, I guess anyone could just say that and it would maybe half be true these days. I mean, I could say that they're offering me a couple quid to, to do a newsletter twice weekly and it would be half believable. But I think the really interesting thing is that it seems like this merger of bike brands and bike conglomerates, like you said, defeated the other merger. It's just it's a true essence of capitalism where it's like whose merger is bigger.
Well, and I wouldn't have put it down to the equipment to like end this, right? And again, we do think it was a number of different things. There were a number of hurdles that had to be crossed. There's a reason why, Patrick Lefevre first said we're going to hear more on Monday. That was October 2nd, and we got into sort of the 5th, 6th before things actually started to fall apart. I did, you're right, Jonny, say last week that for every day that it continued, it became less and less likely. I think we could play the clip of me being very correct about that from last week, perhaps. No. but yeah, like I do think it was a pile of different things, but the equipment sponsors, again, from what I hear, were just a completely insurmountable problem for them because Jumbo had contracts in place that it would have had to either get bought out or just break, right? Which they can't do. And the sponsors that were sort of already with Jumbo were very much pushing back. I spoke with somebody who's actually has a contract with Jumbo for next year. They weren't sponsoring the team this year, but they are sponsoring the team next year. And he was basically like, no, absolutely, we are not letting Specialized come in. And it was a particular category that Specialized would have wanted to sponsor, keeping in mind that like they like to do not only the bikes, but also the kit and the helmets and the shoes and all this other stuff. If they can do everything, they will do everything. So there's a whole bunch of different sponsors beyond even just Cervelo, beyond Pon, that basically just stood up and said, absolutely not. Like, we have a contract with what is currently the best team in the world. We are not going to roll over and let Specialized take that. I think Specialized would have had to chuck a huge amount of money at the problem to make it go away. And well, I don't know if you've seen the bike industry as of late. It's not that Specialized is hurting, but they probably are a little bit less flush than they were a couple years ago, for example.
And Specialized would also have been chucking that money at Jumbo-Visma on the assumption that Remco Evenepoel would make the move across, which there was all this talk about him, having a contract already written with Ineos. And if that had have come to fruition, then there's any chance that Evenepoel would have just turned around and left regardless, and Specialized would then have invested millions of dollars and lost their golden child.
Okay, so speaking of Ineos, you mentioned Ineos there. What on earth is happening at Ineos? Because we've got almost nobody signed for next year. First and foremost, they're still hemorrhaging talent. We're hearing some sort of strange things internally, and then last week, Jonny, there was this rumor that not even rumor. Who published it? Who published this story? Do you remember?
No, it wasn't even that. I think we had one of our secret squirrels whispering to us about a potential Ineos Movistar merger. But then I think it had been somewhere else as well. I think someone else had caught wind of it.
Yeah. Anyway, so we were hearing this thing last week that Ineos and Movistar were going to merge.
Yeah. Nope.
Nope. First of all, nope. For many different reasons. but do we have any sort of like actual insight into this?
In terms of why, no, no. Like, it's one of those things where when you read it, you're like, okay, this is now going to be like a few hours of my life chasing, like everyone trying to chase us down, and finding out that it's not true, and then you look dumb. But it's worth doing because it would have just I think everyone would have had to just lie down and stopped for a while, because I can't imagine those two squads coming together. But we've found out, we've spoken to the right people, and there's nothing to go on there until they come out and announce it later on. And Tom Pidcock's there holding like a phone up to his ear, like the old Phones for You adverts, if British people can remember that. But yeah, just madness. I'm glad it's not true.
But they only have. I mean, the reason why a crazy rumor like this would start swirling is that there is something strange going on at Ineos. There's only 15 riders currently contracted for 2024. People are looking for an answer to that question. Like, why is this the case? There was this sort of suggestion, like you said earlier, that Remco effectively had a contract ready to go with Ineos and probably would have brought a couple riders with him, and that they needed to leave a gap for that, both in terms of budget and in terms of just like rider space. That doesn't look like it's going to be happening. I mean, Ineos at the moment doesn't even have a full team for next year. So what are they doing?
They're just downsizing, Caley. They've had the big mansion, and now they're just getting a little 2-bedroom apartment a little bit closer to family.
That's nice and humanizing.
Do we have any? Do we have any theories? Do we have any theories?
Oh
no,
geez.
We don't have any theories.
By this point, we need the off season. Don't have any more theories than me.
We do.
Sorry, Ian. What's your theory?
It's not a budget thing. Like, they're not trying to gobble up the cheap people that are left over at the end of the transfer cycle. Maybe it's like an opportunistic waiting for good talent on the presumption that there's some other merger happening which hasn't come to fruition. But it is odd.
It's very odd. I mean, they were also tied to Roglic, right? And then Roglic ended up at Bora-Hansgrohe, was officially announced end of last week. So, well, okay. Let's leave Ineos behind.
Sorry, yeah, I don't have anything better than that. It's just too confusing, and it's just, yeah. We need to deal with one like big mega team at a time. We've got too much on our
three of
plates.
us don't have an answer. We don't have an answer on the Ineos question at this point in time. If we find an answer, we will bring it to you, lovely placeholder listeners. But at the moment, it's just confusing. And I think that sometimes just acknowledging that fact rather than making something up is preferable. So let's get to something that is confirmed, which is Primož Roglic is headed to Bora. Now, I think it was Dan Benson over at GCN initially wrote the story on this one. There was some like internet sleuthing for both himself and some other folks. Like they saw him at the Red Bull headquarters in Salzburg, which I think is also a shared headquarters with Bora-Hansgrohe. So potentially we see Roglic in a Red Bull helmet next year, but also potentially maybe not. It might have just been a coincidence. But the deal is done. And apparently Bora kind of, saved their pennies, dug behind the couch cushions, waited for a top rider to become available, and has now grabbed him. What do we think of it?
I think it's good. I think that Bora has been slightly below that sort of top level for the last couple of seasons, with the exception of Jai Hindley winning the Giro. They're a good team, but they're not in that upper echelon just yet. So this helps elevate them a little bit closer to that potentially. I think that for the Rogheads out there, it's going to be good to see him in undisputed team leadership position. I'm excited about the fact that we'll get Roglic and Evenepoel and the Sickly Prince all riding together, well, not together, against each other next year at the Tour. I think it's good for competition.
Yeah, and Roglic being a Bora boy just seems to be something that makes sense, and it's like it always should have been. I feel it just fits his vibe way more, like the late stage Roglic era of just being a bit mad. He's got the moustache now to rival, not to rival Ralph Denks, maybe as like an accoutrement, but yeah, it's just fun. Like I don't know if he's going to be wearing the Red Bull helmet, because the Ralph Denk was on the press call last week announcing it. He was saying that none of it is Red Bull money or like new Red Bull money coming in. Maybe he'll just be like, yeah, I want to wear one. They look amazing. I was always jealous of Wout van Aert's. But yeah, Roglic as a Bora boy, I think it's great for the program. I don't know what that phrase means. Maybe it's just great for our program. I feel like it fits nicely within our world.
It will also, if they're doing a third season of the Netflix series, it might actually mean that Bora
yeah.
are in it. They were one of the filmed teams in the first season, and did not make an appearance at all. Were just edited into oblivion. And I asked Ralph Denk about that at the Tour this year, and he was like, "Yeah, we weren't sexy." Which I thought was nice. So maybe Roglic enhances the sexiness of the Bora boys.
I mean,
I wish people could have seen the hand motion that you were just making there.
I mean, we know exactly
raising the level.
We know exactly how they feel about being harshly edited out of the documentary. It's the one thing we potentially have in common with the Bora boys.
It's true. Our swimming in the river never made it into the show, to our great sadness.
Yeah.
But Mikey and I were spotted from a drone shot.
Oh yeah, that's true.
We were in there for about 2 seconds from 300 feet.
Have you updated your IMDb page?
No, but I should.
You should.
I absolutely should.
Anonymous extra number 1522.
I do genuinely like the fact. I like this move. Like, I like it for Roglic because we said from when we first broke that story about Trek trying to get him, we said that he had to leave. Like, he had to leave. There was no way that he could stay at that team and get what he wanted, which was Tour de France leadership. Like, I don't care what Richard Plugge was saying, it wasn't happening. And Roglic knew that. And I think that's essentially like, the whole Sepp Kuss debacle, as far as he's concerned, at the end of the Vuelta, like, that just hammered home for him, I got to get out of here. And I'm sure that was it. If he had been allowed to win the Vuelta, would he have stayed at Jumbo, do you think?
Yeah, I think he probably wasn't very happy with how everything went down at the Vuelta. Or like, we've heard a few things about that. And I think it's come out in the Slovenian press now that he wasn't happy with it. And also there was like favoritism. Like our sweary surf boy Grisha Nierman was just is very much a sickly boy Prince guy, not a Roglic guy. Which you can see that making sense from Jumbo-Visma's point of view, because that's their future. But I think it's great that Roglic now gets to do a final like couple seasons of trying to win the Tour. And yeah, just a bit more of a German vibe added into the weird like Tour GC battles is great. Often like it's been dominated by certain voices over the past few years, and it'll be great to just have Ralph Denk saying they tried very, very hard today and stuff like that. Oh, I can't even compete with Ian's German accent. I don't know what I tried.
Oh, Jonny, this was really so nice.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, God. Yeah, it's going to be good for the sport. I think it's going to be good for fans. It'll be good for us here on this podcast. We will have just more different riders trying to win the Tour de France, which is always a good thing for everybody. All right. We've chatted about this long enough. We're going to take a quick break.
Hey there, I'm Dane Cash, and I'm taking the opportunity provided by this little break in the action of the podcast you're listening to right now to tell you that if you like bike racing and you want some pretty serious analysis, you should check out the Pretty Serious Bike Racing podcast. Every week, I chat with my co-host Cosmo Catalano and a few other extremely talented analysts, and we break down all the big stories in the pro racing scene. You hear from former road pros like Abby Mickey, Ruth Winder, and Ronan McLaughlin, and from insightful cycling journalists like Caley Fretz, Johnny Long, and Kit Nicholson. We try to dive deep into the racing action to talk tactics, smart moves by some riders, questionable decisions by others, unheralded members of the pro peloton, and a lot more. And despite my best efforts to keep us very serious, you can rely on Cosmo and the rest of our crew to keep the serious level down just to where it's just pretty serious, the perfect amount of serious. You can find the pod on the main Escape Collective podcast feed, and we hope you'll check it out. All right, back to the show.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. We're going to talk very briefly about Gravel Worlds, which happened over the weekend. The UCI Gravel World Championships, something that I think hurts the soul of those with the spirit of gravel here in America. But I actually thought it was pretty cool. What do you guys think?
I think that it was actually a gravelly race this year, whereas last year was basically just a glorified road race. What we saw of the race looked quite cool. There was creek crossings. There was some really sketchy, deep, gravelly bits. There were bridge crossings with like pool noodles over poles in the middle of them, which I liked the ingenuity of that. Yeah, I mean, it looked like somewhere that you would want to ride, and looked like a fun course.
And it was definitely a real bicycle race. Like, it was a serious, crazy, chaotic bicycle race. In fact, I was chatting with Payson McElveen, who was one of the U.S. team members today, and one, he was saying that like having like 15-person teams was probably not the best idea. Like some of the squads were quite deep, and the whole field was enormous. But he's been putting these little clips from like a bar-mounted camera up on Instagram, and they are absolute chaos. Like, it is completely insane, these little clips. Guys just cutting corners, running through a field, like dropping down stuff. That basically the course is mostly a suggestion whenever there's like a corner or a dip or anything like that. But it was still, like you said, Ian, it looked really interesting. It looked like fun riding, and it looked like a really hard bicycle race. I think that the initial reaction from the sort of the American perspective, from the Spirit of Gravel perspective, on all this UCI getting involved in gravel was pretty negative. It was like, get your fingers out of our fun bacon and tequila shot filled bicycle racing. But to me, this just has echoes of sort of like early 90s when essentially Europe did the same thing to cross-country mountain biking, which was, shorter courses, a little bit more sort of professionalized, lots of roadies showing up, a lot of parallels between those two things. And I think at the end of the day, like the product for Worlds was good. It was a real race. It wasn't trying to be like a mullet race, like a lot of American gravel races are, the sort of the business at the front, party at the back. Like this was business front to back, right? And I think that at some point, if you're going to have a bicycle race, admit that it's a bicycle race and just treat it like one, right? Ruth Edwards had a commentary on Escape Collective recently that kind of made this point, which is that a lot of the American gravel races, they try to be sort of everything to everybody, where they're trying to be this chill, relaxed, like I said, bacon hand-ups kind of event. And that's great if you're an amateur. That's great if you're just out there to finish. But then they also have, 20 pros at the front averaging 28 miles an hour for 6.5 to 12 hours. And those two things don't really work all that well together. They don't close roads. They don't do the things that road races have to do for people traveling those speeds. And it's dangerous, and it just doesn't really work all that well, I think. So separating them out like this may be the solution. Like, let amateurs and the Spirit of Gravel do its thing, and let UCI gravel racing do its thing, and let the two different types of athletes do their thing. I kind of like it.
Well, Keegan Swenson nearly outsprinted Alejandro Valverde, which would have been the true Spirit of Gravel. But why do you think that because especially like I was there last year, and there were a few World Tour pros, but it was more like recent retirees that were lining up. But this year it was like there were proper riders there, like Wout van Aert, Matej Mohoric, a bunch of others. Why do you think they've bought in? Is it a sponsorship type thing where brands want their gravel bikes being raced by the top guys, or do they find some joy in it?
That's probably part of it, but I think it's probably more that they find some joy in it. That it was in a cool part of the world with amazing riding. If you like bike racing, and you like bike racing in sort of that chaotic fashion, it was probably a really fun race to do, right? And I think Wout crashed, but obviously Mohoric won. Kassiani Wadoma won the women's race. Unfortunately, we didn't see any of it live because the UCI and organizers decided to only show the men's race live. If you want a fantastic rant on that, listen to this week's Wheel Talk podcast. I know it's going to be a good one when Abby sends it to me and says, can you just listen to this and make sure that we're not going to get sued? That's always, I know that's going to be a good episode. So this one did not disappoint, and you should definitely go listen to Wheel Talk this week to get more on that subject. But yeah, to answer your question, Jonny, I think it's a type of riding that a lot of these riders are doing like in their off seasons anyway, right? I mean, our man Sepp Kuss is back here in Durango and was out doing a gravel ride just outside town yesterday. I was scoping his Strava. It's fun riding, and at the end of the season, if I had to choose Gravel Worlds or Guangxi, I would probably pick Gravel Worlds. And you can win actual rainbow bands, which is pretty sweet.
I'll be able to compare notes in a few days' time. Tell you which is the better experience. Find out what you win at Guangxi.
Well, you've got a commercially branded anorak, as you call it, like a Tour of Guangxi, or
and two
rain jacket,
and two mint green polo shirts, which I'm not sure someone knocked on my door last night and like handed all these things to me, and in my mind I was like, am I supposed to wear these? Because I'm not going to just turn them down. That's like dressing up for Halloween at school and no one else does.
Do you now work for the Tour of Guangxi?
Yeah, I need to figure out what the situation is, but there is a little voice in the back of my head which is just saying wear the polo shirt. If I put it on, I could stand by the finish line and grab riders as they like come across and like wheel them away. I've always wanted
Please,
to
this
do
is
that.
your story from this race. Just, we wanted to masquerade as ASO staff members.
Oh,
that
that's
never
true.
panned out. So now just pretend that you work for the Tour of Guangxi.
I think this is a great idea. I'm into it. I think you should wear the polos and just see what happens. We're going to take a quick break. Welcome back to the show, everybody. We got a couple quick news hits for you. I'm going to run through them so fast, and then we're gonna cry a quick tear because of the last one. Tadej Pogacar won Lombardia, surprising nobody. If you want way more on that, head over to the Pretty Serious Bike Racing Podcast because they have way more on that. Pidcock won the last Cross Country World Cup of the season, meaning he bookended the first and last World Cups, Cross Country World Cups. Riley Sheehan, a name that a lot of you probably won't know out there. He's a stagiaire with Israel Premier Tech, young American guy. So stagiaire meaning like he's not even a fully contracted rider. Won Paris Tour over the weekend, the first American ever to do so. I think Riley is in his early 20s now, 21, 22, something like that, maybe a little bit older. Rides the rest of the season for the NCL team, the Denver Disruptors, and got a stage with Israel Premier Tech for the end of the season and clearly has proven his worth. As far as I know, for next year, he's actually still contracted with the Denver Disruptors. And so I don't think he's got anything World Tour lined up, but I mean, the dude just won Paris Tour. So I hope that changes. Riley's he's a great guy as well. Boulder rider. I've ridden with him a couple different times. All around stand-up person. If you're out there and you run a World Tour team, you should probably hire him. Just saying. Maybe Ineos. They've got some space. Finally, Thibaut Pinot rode his last professional road race of his career over the weekend. Iain, we were sad.
Of course we were sad. It's Thibaut Pinot, and he rode his last professional race over the weekend.
Yeah.
Deeply
The Pinot Ultras showed up, just like they did at the Tour de France, and completely packed one of the climbs, and it was a great scene. I very much enjoyed it.
I think that it's particularly sad for... Well, I think that he had a lot of fans. I'm sure there were people that didn't like his riding style and the way that he swashbuckled his way around. But I think
people
that,
would be wrong, though, of course.
Yeah, I mean, he's like a sentimental favourite for a lot of people, and it's an end of an era. He didn't win a lot of races, and if the stars had aligned in a slightly different way, he probably would have won a lot more. But he always tried, gave it a real go in lots of different scenarios, and often failed, and has a kind of doomed aura as a result, and that's what people loved about him.
Love a good doomed Frenchman.
Yeah, deeply doomed Frenchman, like one of the most doomed.
Is he going to go to gravel next? Do we see gravel in his future?
I hope so.
I don't think he is, because I know that he is planning on opening a guest house on his farm with his partner.
So we could
Which
go
is
stay
where
there.
we're staying at the Tour next year.
Which
Yeah,
is
nice.
where we need to stay at the Tour next year. What we could actually do is make like a little trip of all of the different cyclist guest houses, because Guillaume Martin also has a guest house, also has donkeys, so they're kind of elbowing in on each other's turf there. But what I like about Thibaut Pinot is that he's a little bit less of an intellectual than Guillaume Martin.
That's rude, Iain.
He's-
Come
I
on.
don't know.
He's
But
too
I think
attractive
there's
to be clever, is what you're saying.
No, I think he's got emotional intelligence, and he clearly loves his farm and his animals. And a really nice moment from Lombardia is that he got given a goat by the organisers, which
Alive.
has made its way back to his farm. A live goat called Vittoria.
Wow. That's
And going further down that sort of tangent is that I don't know if they're really clever, the organisers of Lombardia, But he has a tattoo on his arm that says, hang on, I'm going to butcher some pronunciation here. Solo la vittoria è bella. Only victory is beautiful. But I like to think that somebody in RCS Sport noticed the tattoo and were like, we will give him the goat. Call it Vittoria. And now he's just got a tattoo saying that his goat's really, really attractive.
That's great.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I love everything about it. I'm sad to see him go. The sport will be less vibrant without him, and that's just always an unfortunate thing. Chapeau to Thibaut Pinot. We will miss you, and we hope you come back and race Gravel Worlds next year. It is time, gentlemen, for this week's edition of Weekly Pain. Now, of course, last week we talked about how we're going to be bringing in a member to compete with us in Weekly Pain. We are still doing that. We have picked a member. We are reaching out. We are setting up a time. Next week, we will have a member on this segment. But this week is an opportunity for Iain, after not being on the podcast for quite a while, to potentially catch up, you think?
Fall further behind.
Or fall further behind, one of the two. The rules, as always, we have 3 quizzes here. You get 1 point for each, and then whoever gets the most points at the end wins the whole kit and caboodle, gets one of the big points. Actually, 3 of the big points, because we're playing those sort of rules. 3 for a win, 1 for a draw, 0 for a loss. First question. First one to shout it out gets this point. Please name all of the teams that Thibaut Pinot rode for.
Groupama FDJ.
Iain wins. Well done, Iain. Congratulations, you get that point.
I can't even blame the Great Firewall. I was spending so long figuring out what the question meant.
All right. Well, 1 point to Iain. It's 1-0 already. Sorry, Jonny. We'll see if we can bring this one back. Round 2. This is a game of Price is Right. You must give me the correct number without going over the real number. Give me the number of KOM jerseys. So individual days in the KOM jersey that Thibaut Pinot has worn at the Giro d'Italia. How many days has Thibaut Pinot spent in the KOM jersey at the Giro?
4.
Jonny?
5.
8. Jonny takes it. It's now 1-1. Oof. This is getting tight.
Chapeau, Jonny.
And hold on, I gotta get my last tab here.
The price is chapeau. On a Future Tangents podcast, I like the idea of a chapeau segment where we just talk in British accents for like a minute, just riffing.
So good.
All right, your final game here. This is a game of categories, meaning you need to give me all of the riders that fit this particular category. If you cannot, it goes to the other person, and they must provide a correct answer, or else nobody gets the point, and we end up with a draw. You need to give me the entire Groupama FDG team from the 2023 Tour de France. We will start with Jonny.
Thibaut Pinot.
Well done, Iain.
David Gaudu.
Correct, Jonny.
Kevin Genietz.
Well done. Yes. Iain.
Quentin. I'm trying to remember his surname. He has a red beard.
He does.
He has tattoos.
Yeah. Does he have a name?
I'm going to abandon Quentin, and I'm going to say Valentin Madouas.
Also a correct answer. Back to you, Jonny.
I don't know how to pronounce his surname, but it was Mathieu Ladagnu there.
Ladagnu was not there.
I should have gone for Quentin.
Iain, can you give me one more for all the marbles?
Quentin Pashard.
Oh, you're so close. You got to give him that.
Do we give it to him? Johnny, you think we give it to him?
Yeah, defo. That's.
What is his name?
It is
Pacher.
Quentin Pacher.
Pacher.
Yeah. E-R-P-A-C-H-E-R.
I was pretty close.
We'll give it to you.
Yeah,
We'll give it to you. All right, so
very
2
well done.
points to Iain. That means you get all 3. Congratulations.
Who else was in the team?
The riders you missed, Stefan Kung, Olivier Legac,
Kung. Legac.
Legac.
and Lars
favourite
Vandenberg.
Legac.
Great surname.
Lars Vandenberg was the last one. Of course, the directors were Sébastien Joly,
Of course.
who everyone will remember from the Netflix documentary, and Philippe Madoui. Iain, this is your first victory.
You seem surprised by this, Caley.
I'm a little bit surprised by it. So that actually pulls you back into the running pretty well. Which so Dane, current leader is still Jonny with 7, followed by Kit with 5, and then we've got Dane, Iain, and Ronan all on 4 right now. It is tight for third place.
Well, I'll probably be back on in about 4 months and see what I can do then.
I believe in you. All right, everybody. That's it for this week's episode of Placeholders. Again, if you are interested in joining us in one of these quizzes, head over to the Discord, and there's a link in there, and you can put your name down. We should put that link somewhere else, shouldn't we? Probably. We'll think of a good place to put it. We'll tell you next week. We've already picked next week's potential champion, so a new contender. Look forward to it. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back next week.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
Today's correct answers are J. Robert Thompson, Mayen Wang, Kevin Van Melsen, Frederick Friesen, and Jenthe Biermans.
Obviously.